So the next speaker, and just so delighted to have her with us. The topic is, it's not that simple, helping families navigate the Alzheimer's journey. Pam Ostrowski is a certified dementia practitioner, president and CEO of Alzheimer's Family Counseling, and author of It's Not That Simple, a guidebook she created to help families navigate the Alzheimer's journey. Drawing from her professional experience, expertise, and personal experiences as a caregiver for her mom, who lived with Alzheimer's for 14 years. Pam will provide quick tips on how to best cope with the legal, logistical, and medical decisions caregivers must make, while also handling the emotional roller coaster and communication challenges of being a caregiver. Pam, I thank you so much for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pam.
Thank you so much, Charles. I appreciate you having me on today. You know, listening to our two prestigious speakers today and all of the information they provide really touched my heart, because having resources like this, and Hannon, I appreciate your sense of humor, and it's so important for us to have these conversations and to share this information in an approachable manner. So being able to reach out to any of us, please, if you're a caregiver or a family member of someone who's suffering from Alzheimer's, or you're actually someone who has mild cognitive impairment and you're trying to get informed, we are here to help you. You are not alone. And so you might be asking, based on you know, Charles's introduction, who are you really, Pam? Well, as Charles mentioned, I went through a 14-year journey with my mom having Alzheimer's, and in the last 2 years or 3 years, my dad had dementia. And so throughout that journey, I was desperate for some sort of resources, and this was back in 2001. And then we moved to assisted living by 2007. And so we were desperate for information. Who did we go to? What questions? Who could answer our questions? How did we function in this bizarre world where we were losing my mom day by day or week by week, depending on the stage she was in? And I thought someone needs to write a guidebook that kind of has real life examples and also provides tips and guidance about how do you handle all of this. So one of the things that we just talked about in the question was how many people plan? Well, apparently it's 25%. So how do you start that conversation? And one of the things that I talk about in the book is what we did to plan. And then it's a issue where people have fear and resistance. They're scared. We all get scared through this whole thing, and it's okay. And thank goodness for people like Angela who help us go, it's going to be okay. And so my goal in writing both It's Not That Simple and in having created Alzheimer's Family Consulting is to help family members of those with dementia and Alzheimer's not feel guilt, not feel regret, not feel sadness when they look back on this journey, but instead to feel like you did the best you could for your loved one at a time when they needed you the most. And a lot of people think of the Alzheimer's journey as a very sad one, complicated, frustrating, you know, something that you dread and you know, just don't want it to happen. And we don't get to decide who ends up with Alzheimer's or who doesn't. However, I want you to open your mind to the thought that Alzheimer's can expand your heart and your mind as a human being. And the reason I say that is that the moments I had with my mother, the most meaningful moments with my mother, was when I was present, which I was so happy to hear Angela say that. And to just be there with her, to feel her hand, to rub her back, to feed her ice cream sundaes. And what it did is it allowed me to clear the clutter. It allowed me to realize that this person in front of me was the most important person on the planet at that time. It didn't matter that I was running a company or, had friends to go out with that night or whatever. It was all about her. And to me, what that did is it expanded my heart and it expanded who I was. And it made her life so much better during those years. 14 years is a long time. So I just want to share that with you before we launch into what's in the book, because what I did is I structured this book. It's not that simple, helping families navigate the Alzheimer's journey. And you'll notice there was a compass on the cover, and that's kind of me. I consider myself the compass or the navigator in helping you walk along that path. And you can see that dark forest in the background. And, basically there's a lot of things, a lot of decisions you're going to have to make, whether they're medical, personal, financial, legal. I mean, there's just a lot of decisions, and that pressure sits on you 24/7. So again, use those resources that are in Angela's slide deck. Be sure you download that, because it's so important for you to be able to step back and go, I've got perspective, right? So the book covers from everything from, and I won't read all the titles because I'm actually going to go through and tell you what's a little bit about what's in each chapter. But you'll see that this is structured from a lesson perspective, helping you from the very start to the very end on your journey. And the purpose behind that is really to make sure that you have not just what my journey was, because there's a lot of books out there that talk about an individual's journey, but it actually goes through and has criteria and questions for you in each stage. What are the things that you need to do? What are the questions you need to be asking? What are the considerations you need to be making? So it's a comprehensive guidebook, and someone said that they're going to keep it in their pocket until this journey's over. So I appreciated that. And so, it's one of those things. It was launched in October. It has 53 5-star reviews out of 53 total reviews. So I'm very happy about that. But I want to make sure that it's valuable to you. And so I also included conversation starters with actual wording, because my editor said, her mother has Alzheimer's. And she said, I appreciate that you tell us what to talk about, but could you help us out a bit more with how to actually say it? Like, how do you start that conversation? What do you say? So the book actually includes that. So in the first chapter, we talk about, is it dementia or is it Alzheimer's? And just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. There's vascular dementia, there's Lewy body, there's all sorts of different types of dementia. I think there's over 70 different types. So, but the predominant one is Alzheimer's. And thus the work that AFA does to support people and to provide those wonderful emails every week with virtual activities right now when we need them the most, is spectacular, because you're helping so many people. So what I cover, though, is what's the difference between the two? And that includes actual information about the tests and the criteria, your observations of how this individual, your loved one, is actually behaving. So there's at least a dozen of those listed. And it's specific around, really what signs are you looking for? Because a lot of times, and I'm going to talk about this in the next slide, is why we don't recognize Alzheimer's or dementia in general, when we should, and what's happening inside our brains. And one of the things that's so important is that I also hear people say, I was talking to someone yesterday actually, and they said, my 85-year-old aunt is showing, these signs of dementia, and I really think she's, she needs to get to assisted living. And I said, well, let's talk about a few things first. So how is her nutrition? Because all of these elements, these 7 elements, which I credit Dr. Dale Bredesen on for his science behind what things can affect your brain health. And nutrition and hydration, to me, are the number one. And what we eat, like I tell the story in my book about the fact that my dad was resisting, any talk about assisted living. And so I actually tell you about my story and how I approached it. And then I give you conversation starters for your conversation. And preparation, right? Because the documents that Hannon talked about, you have to be able to have that conversation. It's a conversation. It's not a decision making, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. It's, okay, did you know that the state actually controls your finances and your medical decisions if you don't write it down? So that's a consequence. As we get older, we lose the ability to finish the sentence, so to speak. A lot of times we like to lead the horse to water, and we assume that our listener will actually draw the same conclusion that we would. And I would say probably as people age, you've got a 80% shot of being wrong on that one. So don't lead the horse to water. Tell them the end result and come in from that direction and say, did you know that this could happen? And geez, we really don't want that to happen, do we? So when we talk about nutrition and hydration, looking in the refrigerator, I found milk and in the cabinet, sugary cereal and no vegetables. And then I open the freezer and there's White Castle hamburgers and French fries. And my mother never would have eaten any of that, but Dad didn't cook. Mom was the homemaker. And so looking at that, I was like, she is not getting the nutrition she needs, and either is he. So, and then hydration, this woman that I was talking to yesterday, her 85-year-old aunt was not drinking water. She would drink diet soda, which is so bad for you, and or regular soda, which is even worse, but no water. And so I suggested that if you want to get someone to drink more water, take those 24-ounce bottles that you can buy at the grocery store, line 3 of them up, and label them Monday. And then the next row is Tuesday, Wednesday, and so forth. And that way she could read Monday and know that Monday's bottles all have to be empty by the end of the day, and then have a big calendar, and she can write W for her water and a check mark, or some sort of visual thing that says, way to go, you drank all your water today. So as our brains are affected by dementia and early, mid, and late stage Alzheimer's, you get more help through this process, but visual aids are huge. Exercise. So even sitting in a chair, I can move my arms and I can do different things. And there's lots of programs out there, and the AFA has exercise programs virtually right now. So be sure that you sign up for their newsletter to get the virtual events notification for the following week. Spectacular. Absolutely love that newsletter. Sleep. Oh my gosh, how many of us are sleep deprived? Stress. How many of us are under stress? So bear in mind, as I'm reading through these, they apply to you as a caregiver as well. So you have your loved one and you're constantly looking after them, but what if you did this together? What if you said, okay, we're gonna have a competition and we're going to work on making sure that we get through all of these 7 things. And the individual may be stressed about different things than say stress us out, whether that's work or children or family life or whatever. But they may be stressed over the fact that, oh my gosh, what's happened to my brain? Oh my gosh, who's going to take care of me? Oh my gosh, I'm a burden to my family, which was my parents' biggest fear. And usually that's most parents' fear. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want you to have to take care of me. And so stress can come in a lot of different ways. Here's the interesting point about you as a caregiver. Did you know that the symptoms of Alzheimer's happen 20 years after we've actually started damaging the brain? So think about that for a second. If you're in your 50s and you're eating poorly, not hydrating, stressed out, not exercising, not getting any sleep, you're really setting yourself up for a not pretty future. And so we want to make sure that we as caregivers are paying attention to the same things that we want to help our loved one with. And why not do it together? Makes them feel less lonely and less special, right? They don't want to feel like a burden, and they would rather feel like they're helping you. And that's what I talk about a lot in my client coaching, is let's make it feel like they're helping you, not you helping them. So it's all about words. And so hormones, supplements, toxins, the amount of toxins that we take both in medications and we basically eat, are alarming. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of those things that influence dementia. As a matter of fact, there's indicators called false dementia. And false dementia hydration is one of the symptoms, causes rather. And so if you have, hydration issues, it's possible that your brain is 80% water. It needs water. And if you don't give it water, it doesn't function as well. So everybody grab your glass of water and take a sip. Okay, so chapter 2 really talks about, is it time to talk about living arrangements? And notice how I worded that. It's about, is it time to talk about living arrangements in the future, later life care? It makes me cringe, and I feel like doing worse things than that when people say, well, we need to talk about a nursing home. So first of all, and I'll talk about this in the next slide actually, is about care options and what we call things. So we're going to talk about living arrangements. Understand that when you sit down and say, let's have a conversation about later life decisions. What is it that and you know what? There's no reason why you can't all do it at the same time. You don't make your loved one or your loved one and their spouse feel special because they want to be included as part of a group activity, but they also aren't sure how to fight back. And the reason why they want to fight back is because of fear. And of course, caregivers, family members don't necessarily want to have the conversation either because, gosh, my parents are getting older. We're talking about what's going to happen to them when they're not functioning very well, and that they may not be the same person. And I just don't want to think about that. Well, putting your head in the sand only creates more problems, as Hannon pointed out in some of his legal documents. So the easiest way to start the conversation is to ask some questions. If later in life you can't take care of yourself, how do you want to see that happen? What are your thoughts? And respect the answers. Don't negate them and say, oh, you don't want to do that. You said you never wanted to do that. Don't do that. This is about listening first. So look at the situation from the other side. This person is coming from a place of fear and they're confiding in you as a family member and a caregiver potentially as to what they want. So as Angela said, stay in the now. Don't try to predict the future. It's a waste of energy. Trust me, 14 years of it, I can verify. I have walked in your shoes. I have felt the pain. I have made the wrong decisions, and I have questioned everything that I've done. I've sat in the parking lot and cried. Could have used Angela then, by the way. And it's a difficult journey. That's why the book's called It's Not That Simple. But I learned lessons, and I want you to read the book so that you don't make the same mistakes I did, and have some epiphanies and learn how to speak to your loved one in a different way. So the book covers, when do you start having these conversations? And the answer is as soon as possible. There is no reason why, if your parents are in their 60s, that you can't sit down, have a picnic lunch and say, okay, so, and like give them a heads up, don't like spring it on them. But you want to ask them, when things do kind of go south, when you end up in a situation where you can't care for yourself, what's your plan? What are you thinking? What would you like? And so then in the book, we talk about, how do you know it's time? So you ask them, what behaviors should we look for when you may not recognize them yourself that would indicate that it might be time? Have them answer the questions. You don't need to push this on them. And that's the biggest problem, is when you push and say it's time. So this is the avoiding the situation of being under duress is really important. Planning, which we've all talked about, helps you to have the conversation iteratively across several weeks or even months, especially if your parents are in their 60s. So what do you say then? And then how do you handle resistance? And it's fascinating to me how much resistance there is. So I want to talk about the care options, and then I want to talk about why there's resistance and what emotions you're going to go through. So with care options, what are the care options? Okay, so I'm just going to get my pet peeve out of the way right now and say, stop calling it a nursing home. It's a care facility unless your loved one has a medical issue where they need skilled nursing, then that's a nursing home. Where this comes from is that back in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s, all you had was nursing homes. There was no assisted living and memory care or independent living even. There were no real options. And so part of what I consider to be my role is to educate caregivers, family members. Look, they're not nursing homes. So your loved one is living in a different generation and says, you're not putting me in a nursing home. Well, no, you're right, we're not. They're right, you're not putting them in a nursing home. You're putting them in a community, a senior living community that fits with their progressing aging needs. See how those words made such a difference? So what should you be looking for in a care community? Well, it can be something like in this image where it's apartment living, basically. You're going back to your apartments, your condo living. It can be, my parents had a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with a full kitchen and everything until, as mom progressed, we took the kitchen out, it was microwave, because for the most part, people with Alzheimer's can be dangerous to themselves and potentially to others if they start a fire or something like that. It's not their fault. Recognize that this is the disease, it's not the individual. And so, and I'm going to talk about communication in a bit, but the challenge here is that when you try to force something on someone who isn't the same person that they used to be, then you've got to evolve that conversation. You've got to realize that you have to meet them where they are at. And usually that's coming from a place of fear, and then understanding to what their viewpoint is, and that may change from moment to moment potentially. So it requires you to be fast on your feet, or it requires you to step back and just listen. And that's really hard to do when you're a type A person with a lot of control requirements. So I'm just saying that I wasn't perfect at this. Nobody is. You know why? Because we've never gone through it before. Never. Who would have thought, right? And so it's okay to not be perfect and to make mistakes. I just hope that you take a chance to read the book to help you feel better about that, but more importantly, to have the tools and the guidance that you need, the compass that you need on this journey. And so one of the key things here is that you don't want to have any of these conversations under duress. In other words, here's what most care community leaders tell me happens. They see 2 types of clients: the planners, which are a smaller portion, of course, who are, you know what, we want to see where we're going to live, we want to check out what's important to us, we want to observe, we want to eat the food, we want to talk to the nutritionist. Some of the care communities have memory care programs where they actually will focus on delaying as much as possible the progression of dementia and Alzheimer's. And so there's those people who are spending maybe even a year looking at places, getting on the waiting list, but because these places are usually booked up, and as baby boomers age, they're going to be booked up more, so you've got to plan for that. Or there's the people who are under duress. Mom fell, she has dementia, she's in the hospital. The hospital says the arm or whatever is healing, take her to respite care at an assisted living community. She goes there in respite care, and then she never comes home. She goes and moves into an apartment in assisted living. Now, if you're the caregiver trying to make that decision because the hospital tells you 2 days before she's going to be discharged, got to find a place, guess what? You're under pressure, and you didn't do any research, and you don't know how much money you have, and you may not have a plan, so you may not even be financially responsible for paying the bill, and you have no authority to pay the bill from the money that's in your parents' or your loved one's account. Cue Hannon, where that's what a durable power of attorney is for, is to handle the finances. So you can really back yourself into a corner if you're not careful. And unfortunately, a majority of people can be in that situation. Now, before we get into the emotional side of things, one of the issues that if you're dealing with parents, which is my case, my dad wanted to be independent, my mom needed assistance. So when couples care plans don't match, you have to find a community where they accommodate both. So my parents always lived together until probably 10 years in. And then we had to move mom to a special care unit because she needed lifting and personal care that required more than one caregiver. And so dad stayed in assisted living at the time. Actually, he stayed in memory care. And so when have that conversation with the executive director of the care community and say, okay, dad's pretty good, but mom, not so much. We've got cognitive decline. And, in the book, we talk about what questions do you ask them? There's over a dozen questions that you can ask them. And then on my website, it's notthatsimple.com, I include a comparison worksheet so that you can print them all out and then be able to compare apples to apples. And then the next question I usually get is, how involved should family members be during this transition? And it really comes down to two things. One is, before the transition, ask your loved one, how many of us do you want around? You always want to have one primary caregiver, one primary family member who's where the buck stops, the decision maker. But the decision maker's job is to consult with everybody else and make sure you're all on the same page so you don't have resistance. Now, the other aspect is, when you're moving them into the care community, ask the executive director, what are your rules of engagement with family members? How should we approach this? Because again, you've never done this before. And so a lot of family members are helicopter family members, and as opposed to helicopter moms or helicopter dads, and they're constantly in there, and they're disruptive. They're disruptive to their loved one's transition. Please don't be that person. But I can see why it would happen, because you're scared, right? You're acting out of fear that their world is not going to be as happy as it could be. And the bottom line is, my mom was happiest, I think, in those 14 years. I think she was happiest in her last 3 years in a memory care community, because they were constantly doing things. I would go and do things with them because it was fun, right? So when you're thinking about who to involve and how to involve them, let's talk a bit about the next chapter, which is about building your care team. Who's in a care team? Whoever you want. Friends, family, nurses, doctors, social workers, whoever you are most comfortable with, who you can have conversations with. Even people like, the resources at AFA can be part of your care team, caring for you or giving you resources. So there's tiers of them, or circles. I like to always use concentric circles. So each care team member can have a role. There might be the person who schedules doctor's appointments and goes to the doctor's appointments. You never want anyone with dementia going to a doctor's appointment alone, from so many reasons. It's not just the driving. And it has to do with how they handle the information, how they assimilate it or not in this case, and then how they, what would be the right word that's polite? Change it. How about that? So that when you ask them, how'd the doctor's appointment go? I remember my dad said, and I actually went to this one, and we got home and he's like, well, I have to take these medications twice a day. And I said, no, you take them once a day for 2 weeks. And he argued with me, and I said, fine, I'll tell you what, I'll email the doctor and we'll get his notes, and then I will bring that over to you. And he said, fine. And sure enough, I was right. And oh my gosh, what if he had taken that medication twice a day? And so that's what you have to create, and create a care team where the individuals can actually participate and have a role, but not have to do everything. So I was the primary in my family. My brother's jobs were to field dad, because dad had all sorts. He was a retired lieutenant colonel. He was very controlling, got very upset, got frustrated. And of course, and I'll tell you this story, because it's meaningful. And I lead a memory support group, and they all got teary-eyed when I told them, because they said, absolutely, that's how we feel. And so I said to Dad, he was yelling at the care workers because they didn't give my mom her medication at exactly 9 o'clock. They have an hour window for giving medication, and that was not acceptable. So I ushered them out and said, thank you very much, I apologize. And then I sat him down and I said, so what's going on? And he's like, I can't believe that they're not giving them medication. And you know, she's supposed to have her medication at 9 o'clock. And I said, well, we're not in the Army anymore, and it's not really going to affect her performance in any way, shape, or form, or her well-being if it's delayed by a few minutes. And I said, so what's really going on? And he shook his head. It was the saddest thing. And he said, you don't understand. And I said, try me. What's going on? And he's like, this was not the way it was supposed to be. Think about that. They planned all their lives to live forever, I guess. And I think that's part of our planning problem. And he said, I'm older than she is by 6 years. She was supposed to take care of me, not the other way around. She's supposed to still be around for me. This was not how we planned it. And, you know, all I could say was, I'm sorry. Plans don't always go the way we want. So pick your family members who are best at empathetic listening. So my eldest brother would stay on the phone for an hour with my dad. I was running a company, I was married, I had a stepson, I had all sorts of things going on. And I was like, I do not have time for this. You take him. And so it was such a blessing. So, you know, one of the things that's so important is that you build that care team, because you're going to need it any way you want to look at it. All right, let's get to the emotional roller coaster. So all of us start out with fear and resistance. And the thing that plays at the heartstrings is uncertainty, that we're making the wrong choices. So when Senator Klobuchar said that they tried different locations and they found the right care community, that may happen, but odds are the loved one finally settled in and went, okay, you know, I get what we're doing, or they were so far advanced that they didn't know they had moved and they just, you know, then you can redirect them, and it's easier to help the individual be happier. But the fear and resistance is tied into denial. We don't want this to happen. We don't want our loved ones to age, let alone have dementia or Alzheimer's. I have to tell you though, my mom was the happiest as soon as she let go of all the things she used to worry about. And every day was a new day. Every day she got to have ice cream sundaes, which she loved. She got to play with her baby doll. She had stuffed animals. I mean, those all things are when you visit, are all important to Alzheimer's individuals, because they love tactile things. And so initially when your loved one moves in, they may say, I want to go home. Now, we as well-minded people think they mean the building that we grew up in with all the pictures and the tattered sofa and, you know, all the knickknacks and all that stuff. What if, and bear with me here, what if that's not what they mean? Because home is a feeling. Home is a place that you belong, that you know where things are, that you know who you are and where you're most comfortable. So I challenge you, the next time that you're talking with your loved one and you hear them say, I want to go home, if they're in the care community, to realize that they just feel a little lost right now. Rub their back, hold their hand, redirect them with a stuffed animal or magazine, any of those types of tools. So You know, it's that type of thing to think about when you talk about home. Anger, frustration, grief, sadness, and hope. You know, I walked in one day and I was able to, saw my mom and she said my name. She hadn't said my name in 2 to 3 years. These are all the emotions that we deal with, and the book handles all of them as to how to deal with them. Now, when we get to communicating in a brave new world, I want you to, this is too much for us to go through and read, but the key words here are show, don't instruct. Alzheimer's individuals cannot process instructions, most likely. My mom was non-vocal for 8 years before she passed. So the concept of saying smile for a photo, she couldn't do it, didn't know what you were talking about. So you smile and go like this. And all of a sudden, she smiles back because you're smiling. If it's time to go to bed, you know, do this. So don't give them complex activities. Don't tell them you're going to be there on Sunday. You know, don't refer to memories, you know, and allow them grace. If they say the bus is late when they're sitting inside their care community, just say, let me go check on that. The bus is, I hate it when the bus is late, and continue on. And watch your tone. So often I heard family members get upset. And the one thing that Alzheimer's individuals note that they actually remember emotions. They remember not that you visited, but they will remember that you were angry with them. And here's the thing, you were never angry with them. You were angry with the nurse, or you were angry with a caregiver, or you were angry that for whatever reason, you were having a bad day, but they remember the emotion. So don't go visit them. Don't have a conversation with them. If you're frustrated, angry, tired, and or any of those negative emotions, make sure that you reach to them. When you reach out to them, it's with love, joy, happiness, tenderness. Let them know they're loved, because that is what they're going to keep with them, is whatever emotions you're showing for them. And my mom could read me like a book. So speaking of visiting, it's really important when you visit a loved one, especially well, basically in any environment, you know, give them a hug and then greet them with how they know you. So I would always introduce myself with mom, and I'd give her a kiss and I'd say, hi mom, it's Pam. Or hi, it's Pam, your daughter. It's kind of dependent on the day. And then if you're bringing others with you, first of all, limit the number of people. Don't bring the entire family into an assisted living or memory care community, because it's overwhelming for the loved one. It's like, I can't remember any of these people. Should I know these people? I mean, you're just creating so much anxiety. So instead, bring, maybe 2 people with you and introduce them and say, this is Bob, your grandson, and he can say, hi, Grandpa, it's your grandson, Bob, and hold them and allow them to feel that that individual loves them, and understand that they may not recognize you and that that's okay. All they're really looking for at this stage in their lives is to feel loved. So talk up to your care community about their best practices. Never argue or upset your loved one. And another point that people assume is, well, he doesn't like broccoli, or he doesn't like music, or he doesn't like playing cards. The beauty of Alzheimer's is that it's a clean slate. They don't remember what they like or don't like. So let them try things. Remember that we're the ones narrowing their world. We're the ones putting them in that box. And so make sure that you don't limit them, and bring them gifts that they enjoy. So, tape measures for the gentleman, paints, handyman activity boxes, stuffed animals, anything tactile like scarves or furry animals, that type of thing that feels soft and vibrate. You can go to, there's several different stores. Just Google Alzheimer's gifts, and Mind Care Store is one that I'm familiar with. And then when it's time to leave, please don't say, we'll see you on Sunday. They don't know when Sunday is. It actually started an argument at one care community between a loved one and their family, because he's like, is that tomorrow? No, Dad, it's not tomorrow. So, and it's like, dude, just chill. He doesn't know what day it is. But it was the resistance and fear inside that loved one that wanted the son wanted the loved one to understand reality, and they can't, and you can't force them to. Would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? So don't argue with them. Instead say, I love you, I have to go, but I'll be back. Or I used to tell my mom, I love you, I'll be back, I have to take the dogs out. And she knew that. She knew that reference because I always said it. So when the end is near, and this is a tough time, but make sure that everything Hannon said was so incredibly spot on in my experiences. And so have the proper documents, whether it's durable power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, advance directives. You don't want the state taking over your loved one's life while you watch and have no control over it. Know the signs of when the end is near, and any good hospice nurse can help you with that, but so can any nurse within your care community. And most of all, know that you've done the best that you could. You don't feel guilty, don't feel regret. You'll feel sadness. Grief is a whole other book, let me tell you. But remember that you did the best you could. You gave them the best journey you could. You were always joyful and loving and tender with them when you were with them. And, you know, they had a good life. They had a good life because of you. So keep that in mind. Now, if you'd like to reach me, basically, my question to you is, don't you deserve someone, a guide, to help you build a care strategy and learn tips and guidance and have someone be by your side during this journey? So if you'd like to reach out to me, I'm at pam@itsnotthatsimple.com. Oddly enough, the website's also called itsnotthatsimple.com, and there's tools and tips, and I'm going to be putting up some videos and that type of thing. My YouTube channel is under my company name, which is Alzheimer's Family Consulting, and I do lots of talks and walk through each of these chapters and do a deep dive. So if you're interested in getting more information, be sure to go to that Alzheimer's Family Consulting YouTube channel and start watching there. And then, of course, I have a Facebook page called It's Not That Simple Memory Care, so that people can find it. So that is it. I hope you found this helpful, and I will hand it back for any questions. Charles?
Hey, Pam, thanks so much. I found it helpful. You know, we were founded by a caregiver who really believed at the time when he was caring for his mom, he really didn't have the support services back in the 80s and 90s. Mr. Bert Brodsky was our board chairman, but he believed in something that you said over and over. You can't go on this journey alone. So your tips, your strategies, your personal experiences is a tremendous asset to our participants today. I'm so grateful. Tomorrow we will do a follow-up video so everybody will have your information, and reach out to Pam. I mean, the services that she offers to all of you and everybody throughout the entire state of Minnesota and the country are invaluable. Pam, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.